Hi, this is Nate Schulte, and I'd like to welcome you all with an edition of Discovering Battles with Nate Schulte. My brother Ben is actually going to be the cameraman for this episode, and I appreciate him. But we'll get down to it. Today's battle will be the Battle of Gallipoli, which took place in 1915 at Gallipoli Peninsula. It had the French, the British, and the Anzacs, or the Australian New Zealand Army Corps. And this was pretty much Australia's first known battle. If we will direct yours to the map here of Axis and Allies, the World War I 1914 edition. Now, what happened is Gallipoli took place right over in Turkey here, Ben.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, in Turkey. See, what happened was on October 29th, 1914, Russia had its ports pretty much attacked and cut off. Now, since Russia was allies with England and France during World War I, England was going to send supplies over to help Russia out in the war effort. But since the supply line was cut off there, that's when things kind of heated up a little bit more. England and France had their own armadas, and they tried this like about 2 or 3 times to attack Gallipoli to try and clear it, so that way everything could be cleared out, and also Constantinople would have been attacked too. But with all the efforts that were made, little progress was made. But after their very last attack, which was late of 1914, 1915, which was the last one in February, was the last attack effort for the Allied naval forces when little progress was made. That's when the Turkish army decided to actually try and build things up, like they added torpedo tubes from the shore of Gallipoli. Also, 344 mines were put in the Dardanelles Straits, and they spent that month digging trenches just so they could, prepare for battle in case, whatever beaches were in trouble. The thing is that since all this was going on, the British decided, well, since the naval forces aren't working, it's about time we started getting some troops on the ground there, which is eventually what they did. Now, Australia and New Zealand were actually being trained in Egypt here, but that was only for the heat warfare and stuff. And the biggest mistake there was that the Turkish army were reading papers that were from Egypt. So the Turkish army knew that something was going to be going on, and if the Australian army was going to be that far close, well, then that's something obviously is bound to happen. England, on the other hand, wanted to try and get them going on. However, most of the leadership wanted to focus on the Western front here. But Russia was in desperate need of services, so they decided to try and see if they could pull off the invasion. But the invasion was just improvised with equipment that was only available back then. The organizational skills were not very well. Not only that, reconnaissance mission, there was no airplanes used for this because there were no Allied bases back nearby to try and get Gallipoli and get reconnaissance mission. Instead, most of the ships had observers on them, and they were actually trying to, make drawings of the beaches and the cliffs and everything. Well, the problem there is that it wasn't close enough to be able to determine what the Turkish army was up to. That was the problem. And they were not very well organized, and they didn't have enough maps, so they didn't know how they were going to pull the operation off to begin with lack of intelligence and everything, and the equipment. The first invasion for the Allied forces, the ground forces that is, took place on April 24th, 1915 at midnight. Reason why midnight is because there was a bunch of rowboats that were used to transport the troops from the transport ships. And they had to use steam tugboats in order to be able to get them in faster. It's not always that easy, though. What happened then is that they were all divided into 5 beaches. And we will go over to this improvised model here. Follow me this way, please.
I know.
Right. This is actually how Gallipoli went on. There was S Beach, V Beach, W Beach, X Beach, and Y Beach. This is the Cape Helles area of it. At V Beach here, there was about 1,000 casualties. You see a transport ship got laid aground, and while the machine guns were actually taking them out and also keeping the invading forces on the beaches. But that was only one of the few obstacles. Another obstacle was the barbed wire here. Now, I know a lot of this stuff isn't exactly, barbed wire and stuff, but to avoid confusion, you see the gray for the Civil War guys, that's actually going to be the British. The blue will be the Australians, and then the black, red, and also the green guys will be the Turkish army, and the cannons are actually machine guns. Right. But back to the lesson. At V Beach, and W Beach, casualties were skyrocketing like crazy. As I just recently stated, at V Beach, a transport ship lay aground, and the machine guns were pretty much wiping them out. About maybe only 30 survived because of the gangplank. We're sitting ducks. Also, but that's not the only place. Near Gaba Tepe, Z Beach, the Australian and Anzacs were actually invading there, but there were snipers, Turkish snipers, that were awaiting them, and they were getting ready to knock them out. But Z Beach today is also known as Anzacs Cove in honor of their trying. The Anzac forces did try to manage to get to a hill, but then there was another hill, and it was just pretty much impossible to cross. So they had to go somewhere else. But by the time May came around, men were getting sick and all left and right, and there was diseases getting spread around. Few beaches had been secured, but it was pretty much a stalemate in all kinds of areas. And because of all of that, there was bad latrines, which spread most of the diseases, along with, flies coming around and lice, and everybody was constantly dirty. The Turkish army had reinforcements coming all the time because it would have been connected to the mainland of Turkey. Some of the Turkish fighters were locals who were actually trying to fight for their homeland. They figured if they fought for their homeland, they'd be able to say they actually defended their country. The British and the Australians, however, had to wait until it arrived by ship. And the supply ships were not always loaded fully with supplies and stuff because they figured, they would be making progress soon, so why put in too many supplies? It's not always the case. Dirty water was also going around there too. There was not much for clean water, which also caused most of the guys getting sick. Yeah. When June rolled around, there was a little progress that was made on the Gallipoli Peninsula with the Allied forces. They were able to capture a trench. However, when that trench got captured and the relief troops came up to try and, secure it, the relief troops ended up retreating because they were overrun and the Turkish armies pretty much took it back over. They started out with 60 men. Only 3 survived. Then there was mining that was doing, there were mine holes being dug in the trenches to try and get over to the other side and use a little bomb like things like what you see on the Super Mario Brothers with the feet, only they would take off the feet. It was a fuse and it was just a little grenade-like thing. But according to some of the documentaries that I've seen, unfortunately it didn't work and not much progress was made there either. By the time the beaches that were actually eventually secured were pretty much the V beach, Y beach, which is right over here, and the S beach, but everything else was still fighting. Come August, Suvla Bay was invaded, and this was the last effort for the Allied forces. What happened is there was a wider beach for them to invade so they can get on there. And there was a fresh water supply there, and fresh water was in need, especially when all the men were getting sick. But by the time October 15th came, that was when, after this happened, not much was really made. By the time August came around, everybody was devastated. But back to October. By October 15th, they decided, either the battle was to be over or to keep going. But due to all of this going on, most of the men were pretty much, at the end of their ropes. They were tired, they were exhausted, they were sick, and there was very little doubt left that something was actually going to do. So by the time December came around, December 1915, the Allied forces were evacuated from Gallipoli, and the Turkish army didn't even put up a fight because they were tired too, and they figured, well, they're leaving, let's just leave them alone. As for casualties, according to one source that I've read, the Allied forces suffered 265,000 casualties, while the Turkish army possibly maybe 300,000. The thing to remember about this battle is that they were not very well prepared. They did not plan their attacks very well, which is mostly what a lot of people, say. And there was not much supplies. I hope you enjoyed this video of Gallipoli. If you have any questions about this battle, or if you would like me to talk about a battle, you can email me at NateDog, that's capital NATDOG 62785@yahoo.com. I hope you enjoyed this, and like I said, if you have any questions or if you would like me to talk about any battles, you go ahead and email me and I will do my best to answer them. Thank you.